Well, welcome to this series of webinars. Um, before before talking about today's theme, I want to present myself to you because I think most of you have not been in one of my webinars before, even though there are some that had been nearly in all my webinars, okay? So I'm Maria Sanchez, and I can tell you that I'm a passionate person for teaching, and I love to exchange with people, with students, and help them to learn how to achieve the goal of finishing high quality dissertation, but most of all, that all of you can feel what a scholar really is, okay? So I want to tell you that I used to begin my webinars before the webinar begins, playing some music so you can all relax enough to understand what we are going to do. Please feel free to ask any question, to make any comment. We are here to learn from each other. And under the handouts tab, you have the presentation that I'm going to use today, even though any person who has registered for this webinar will have the link for this recording, okay? I don't know, I'm not quite sure, Bam, if I can use that. I promise to investigate that, okay? And I can fully understand you because I have the same thing. I can't hear through my left ear, and only for my right one. I'll do my, if you want, I can talk a little louder. So meanwhile, I check about what you told me about the subtitles. Okay. So welcome to this webinar. This is the first webinar of a series that I will conduct on Tuesdays, and that will be focused on guiding you in a pragmatic but supported way to develop your graduate work successfully and survive the journey. To achieve such goals, the webinars will include themes about academic writing, organization, data analysis, presentation, and needed skills. So I want you to relax and open your mind to explore new ways of doing old tasks, okay? I will be your first officer. So think of me as a kind of Mr. Spock, Data, or Saru in Star Trek, because you will be the captain. You will be T.J. Kirk, Jean-Luc Picard, or Michael Burnham. As you can see, I'm a Trekkie, okay? Then let's go where no graduate student has gone before. Your commitment, the final frontier. This webinar is about the mindset you need to begin writing at graduate level successfully. Welcome everybody that I haven't say welcome before. Okay, everybody. Of course, when I say that you are going to write at graduate level successfully, that's a wide and complex theme which we have discussed in many webinars which you can have access to. But following the essence of this set of webinars, I will give you a basic view and some guidelines to create such mindset. A good starting point is interpreting this quote. To write, you need to think first. It's necessary to define what you want to say, why you want to do that, and how to do it, in order to assure your ideas can be interpreted as you wish they are. And as the quote says, that's what makes it difficult. Why? Without a clear view of those three elements, your writing is confusing, and it may take readers to unexpected interpretations. Therefore, thinking clearly is a must for writing. That implies a hard journey. Yes, that's true. But the good news is that you can prepare yourself to do it. And that's why we are here today. And this is the agenda we will develop to get our goal today. Oh, yes, of course, I cannot forget about Kranz Pine. Absolutely. And he was a captain during the second season of Star Trek Discovery. Hi, Leo, from New York City. Okay, this is the agenda we will develop to get our goal today. As usual, I begin giving you a picture of what you are dealing with. You say, why? I just want the tips. No, because you cannot master what you don't understand. So again, thinking comes before acting, and in this case, writing. I will talk about what academic writing is and three basic concepts related to thinking before writing. Then you will be ready to know some basic guidelines you may follow to prepare your mind for actually writing academic tests. So let's talk about the field through which you have to travel during your master's or doctoral journey. Thank you, Margaret. Okay. Think of it as a kind of forest that from the outside may seem too intricate to cross safely. And if you begin walking without a roadmap, believe me, it may be so complicated that you would wish a rescue team to save you. However, if you have that roadmap and the appropriate mindset before getting into that forest, your journey will be less difficult and more enjoyable. Pay attention to what I just said. Less difficult. I don't want you to think that you can have a recipe to move through the forest and that would be enough. Not at all. You will have a roadmap and the needed attitude, and that will be an excellent plus to the other things needed, which are commitment and practice. Okay, so it's more than concept, it's more than tricks and tips. you need other things, but you also need the right attitude, the right mindset, and especially commitment and practice. Now, language is a form of communicating with others through the code. That code could emerge from social interactions or could be designed for specific purposes that should be fulfilled. The former is called natural language, and the latter, artificial language. Academic language is obviously based on a natural language, but it is influenced by some specific purposes derived from the need to interact with an academic environment. And academic writing is its written expression. So, academic environments reflect some expectations and behaviors of the people who interact in those contexts, and that are influenced by the purposes they have, which, broadly speaking, are associated to convince other people about the validity and consistency of their ideas. That's usually the purpose of writing and even of talking in academic context, to convince about the validity and consistency of ideas. That implies the need for a common and precise code. That's why rules have emerged, and the reason for the last point of the slide. So you may ask yourself, why is it necessary to make our life so complicated? Well, the slide presents three main reasons for the existence of academic writing. All of them are linked to the kind of social environment where it takes place. So just imagine the number of misinterpretations we will face if each one of us can write academic texts without following any rule. Ooh, it will be funny but annoying at the end. That's why we need to follow some rules, okay? So that's why academic writing should have these characteristics, which establish a common ground where surprises come from ideas and not from the code. I have conducted several webinars about this characteristic, and you can find them at your doctoral net page or connection, okay? So, but when you think about academic writing, you think about something that is formal, because academic environments are formal in the way that we interact with teachers, with professors, with peers, and so on. Academic writing should be explicit. Why? Because you cannot open the door to misinterpretations. You need everybody to understand what you have written in the way that you intend them to do it. And that's why academic writing has also to be precise. You have to talk about the thing that you want to talk about in a precise way. And because of that, it is also structured. Each academic text has to follow a specific structure. And your text has to be unbiased too. And why? Because You need to convince people about the validity and consistency of your ideas. And if you are biased, you cannot do that, because people are always to think, wait a minute, what about other ways of looking at this point? So you don't have to be, you have to be unbiased. And you also have to be responsible in terms of giving credit to the people who has created or have proposed things before you. That's why you need to use citation. And that is also part of why academic writing is supported. You have to support your ideas with the ideas of other people. Yeah. Oh, Adrian, welcome. Adrian says that this slide states the underlying heuristics for writing meal plan paragraph. And that's true. And we are going to talk about that in another webinar. Okay. So now let's focus on the writing process so you can know what we talk about when dealing with it. The writing process has 3 stages, and you need to understand each one of them in order to perform them successfully. Today, we will talk about what you should do before writing, because, as I said before, thinking is the key to good writing. Okay? But thinking for writing academic text is not something you should do without a strategy, because if you do that, it may cause that your texts don't satisfy the expectation they are intended to fulfill. To avoid that, I will present you 3 concepts to understand, because they will help you think productively and therefore write better. Alia says, this is a rubric. Thank you for sharing it with us, but it's so hard to maintain this part throughout the paper. Yeah, and that's what I tell you, that you need commitment and practice. And I'm going to give you some tips and some tricks that you can use to keep that. Okay. And these are those concepts, which in fact are 3 processes to do before writing. Now let's have a quick look at each one of them. Only a quick look, so you can understand what we are talking about and why we are saying what we are saying. The first concept is critical reading, which means a type of reading focused on getting the kind of information needed to create convincing arguments. Considering its nature, importance, and demands, academic reading has to be performed in such a way that assures the objective established for gathering the needed information. It has to be efficient, active, and reflective. And you may think, how can I do that? Well, to be able to do that, you need to take into account some elements that influence the process of reading academic text reflectively. Those elements are purpose, type of text, and strategy. And I will expand them this later. Okay, just remember that you will need to have a purpose, know the type of text you have to write, and how to apply some strategies. By now, let's talk about critical thinking. Don't worry that I'm going to expand all the things later on, and just want to present you the 3 concepts that you need to know before writing. And why? Because these 3 concepts are what you have to perform to think before writing. Now, let's begin pointing out that this is not knowledge learned by heart, without reflection, analysis, or evaluation. It is not to have the skills to do it and not be willing to use them, or simply not apply them. And it is not applying the skills and then do not have the disposition to accept what the whole process of thinking critical tells us, and use that to improve the target situation and our own thinking. And you may ask, oh, so what it is? Well, in order to conceptualize it, let's check some of the tasks we use it for. When you check the tasks presented in the slide, you can realize that all of them are complex and important elements of our daily and professional life. Then we are dealing with something very, very necessary. And what it is? Well, critical thinking is a harmonic combination of 3 elements: looking for information and managing it consciously, the habit of using specific developed skills to look for and handle information in an intended way, and also the disposition of using the products of that thinking process to improve ourselves and society too. So that is critical thinking: knowledge, habit, and acceptance to be better. I guess that at the beginning, when I was beginning to talk about critical thinking, you were thinking that it is only a cognitive process. It is a cognitive process, but it also implies that besides getting information, you have to develop the habit of using it, and the habit of accepting the consequences of using that information. So from this active combination, progress derives at individual and social level. Now it's time to present critical analysis, a term that usually intrigues students. When students are faced with the need to do critical analysis, they ask themselves questions like this: what does it mean? What do I have to do? Why am I expected to do that? How can I do it? All of them are valid questions and make students anxious about the academic tasks that they are expected to do. So we will focus on the first question to know what that intriguing process really is. What students know well is description. You are very used to describe things. But what intrigues you is critical analysis. A comparison between the 2 concepts will illustrate the differences. This table shows them. Please pay attention to the verbs that state the actions required and how the ones associated to critical analysis imply a higher level of thinking. Check, for instance, the second row of differences and think about how different states what something is like is from evaluate strengths and weaknesses. That is the core of what we are talking about. Critical analysis requires to go beyond what is explicit and look for relationships that may be implicit presented and even making a judgment about their validity and consistency. If you reflect upon the verbs in bold font, you will realize they require that you do more complex actions than the ones associated to describing. That's the key of critical analysis. So, therefore, critical analysis implies to focus on establishing the main ideas, elements, or points of view of a product or situation, evaluate their validity and consistency, and link them to you as actor or evaluator. Those three tasks must be performed if you want to do critical analysis. You have to act in two different levels. First, getting the gist of what you are dealing with. And second, going beyond to explain it and its relationships in a way that can convince not only you, but also other people that your view of it is true or at least logical. Okay, once you have a clear picture of what is involved in the pre-writing stage, it's time to talk about how to apply it in order to write academic text. This is the pragmatic part of this webinar, the one that cannot be used effectively without understanding what I have presented so far. Remember, you cannot use wisely what you don't understand. So if you don't understand the concepts, if you don't understand the nature of what you are dealing with, you will end up using a kind of cooking recipe without really know what are you expected to do with it. Okay. So thinking before writing has critical reading as a necessary input. As I said before, critical reading requires you to pay attention to these three elements: purpose of reading, types of texts, and strategies to read. Let's see how you can do each one of them. The purpose you have to read determines the kind of activity you need to perform in order to get the necessary information, as the table shows. It's not the same to find answers to specific questions as a purpose that to read a paper to get general ideas and background information, or to get detailed understanding of content, or to collect evidence to support points of view. So, according to the purpose of your reading, you have to do different things. Oh yeah, but don't worry, because you are going to receive the link for the recording of the whole webinar. So go and don't worry about that. Okay, so consequently, establish a purpose before reading and you will not waste time or effort reading non-significant parts of a text. So you say, okay, I want to read this. Oh, de nada. I want to read this in order to get some general ideas about what this article talks about. So what you have to do is to look for headings, subheadings, abstract, and introduction. And when you do that, you can evaluate the information and say, okay, this may be useful for my work or not at all. This will not be useful at all. So you don't spend time reading it. Okay, so the characteristics of the text you read influence your reading, since the structure of the text emphasizes some elements, and you need to be aware of that to choose the most productive course of action. Each type of academic text has its own structure, and although they have things in common, because they do, they also have differences in the elements that are emphasized. For example, the focus of an interview transcript differs greatly of the one of journal articles or dissertations. Therefore, some of the activities to perform should also be different. In the slide, you can see how different types of texts have different characteristics of which you have to be aware. Okay, so this is a tip. So before reading, you have to know what kind of text you are going to read. The third element that influences reading reflectively refers to the strategies you can apply to get the information you really need. Here you have a list of the most useful strategies. This is not an exhaustive list, but a very good basic list. They require that you understand the nature of each strategy and you practice a lot to master them. Two things. First, you understand each one of those strategies, and then you practice and practice and practice, and then you master them. I have conducted webinars about them, and you can find them at a doctoral net page or PhD education page. Now, something important to remember is that strategies differ from reader to reader, and even the same reader may use different strategies for different contexts because their purpose for reading changes. So it's nothing fixed. It's something that flows in terms of reader to reader and the same reader in terms of what the purpose of reading is. So you need to ask yourself, and remember this, why am I reading? That's the purpose. And what am I reading? That's the kind of text that you are reading. Once you have answered those questions, then you are ready to decide which strategy you can try. Now, let's talk about critical thinking. Here you have some basic actions that will help you perform it in a more productive way. These are the tips. All of them imply that you act in a deliberative way to get a goal. That course of action includes identification of elements and relationships, connection between them, evaluation of their validity, consistency, and appropriateness to your own situation, and also evaluation of how your point of view relates to them. In conclusion, to perform critical thinking productively, you interpret the gathered information and also connect it to you and your context. Okay? So, look at those tips. And you say, when you are thinking critically, you understand how the ideas connect. You have to know the importance and relevance of the arguments and of the ideas too. You have to recognize, build, and evaluate arguments. We are going to talk about arguments in the next week. You have to identify inconsistencies and errors in reasoning, because don't believe things at face value. No. Not everything that is written in a book or in an article is free of inconsistencies or free of errors, mistakes. Not at all. You have to identify if there are or not that kind of things. And you have to approach problems or tasks that you are doing in a consistent and systematic way. It's not something that you can do without any previous organization. I mean, you can do it, but the results are not what you are expecting to have. Okay, so you need a plan of action, a systematic way of doing things, and you always have to reflect upon your own assumptions, your own belief, and your own values, and how they are influencing your evaluation of what you are reading. Now, you may ask, how can I do that, critical thinking? Well, this is a model that may help you perform critical thinking systematically. It includes different types of questions you can ask in order to reflect upon how information can be described, interpreted, evaluated, and used. The model is linear in the sense that it includes 3 stages process, right? There is a part of a process which is a description, another part in which you analyze, and a last part in which you evaluate. But please be aware that you can go forwards and backwards whenever you need it to refine or interpret information better. So it is presented as a linear model, but it is not a linear one, because you can move forwards and backwards whenever you need it in order to understand better, or in order to refine, or in order to make a better process. Of course, there are more than one way of creating a plan to perform critical analysis in this case, because now it's time to talk about critical analysis. There are many different ways of doing. Perhaps the easiest and more appealing way is to ask questions while you are reading the source. And that's why I'm presented this slide, okay? This is another tip. This is the easiest way of doing critical analysis. And it implies that while you are reading the paper, the article, whatever you are reading, you ask questions that make you identify and help key aspects of it. In the slide, you can see the kinds of questions that can help you gather the necessary information to achieve your goal. If you read the questions, it is evident that their answers are not only based on describing, but also on evaluating, interpreting, and explaining what you are reading. For example, one question asks about the author's theoretical framework, which means you have to describe it. However, a question like, could the problem be approached from another perspective more effectively? That's a question that requires that you evaluate that possibility and get support to your answer. And when you do that, you are performing critical analysis. So, it is advisable that you use the suggested questions and many others to practice how to perform critical analysis. Okay. Of course, we have done other webinars about critical analysis too. Okay. As I said at the beginning of the webinar, I intend to give you some tools to perform academic tasks in a more systematical way, but setting them upon a conceptual base, because you cannot apply what you don't understand, and I insist on that. Therefore, the next tips are focused on reminding you essential ideas related to today's theme. And here you have them. I have highlighted some key words to make it easy for you. Okay? Remember those words. Academic writing has some specific rules, and you have to comply with those rules. Academic writing is complex but feasible. You can learn how to create high-quality academic tests. What you need is knowledge. That is what I'm intending to give you right now. But you also need commitment to practice and reflect. Reflect and practice. Reading is the first input. In academic context, you need to read first in order to get the information that you need to create a convincing academic text. Thinking is the key. You are not reciting a recipe or something like that. No, you first have to think about what I want to say. How can I do that? Or why I want to say that. Okay, so you need to think before writing. Critical analysis is what everybody looks for. Your professors, your supervisors, your committee, your peers, everybody wants to find critical analysis in your texts. Next week, I'm going to talk about that. A little more thorough. Each process should be approached systematically. Academic writing cannot be done in a sporadic or unthoughtful way. No, you have to follow a system, a course of action, so you can get the appropriate result. And don't forget that there are techniques to do critical reading, thinking, and analysis. I have given you some ideas, some tips about how to do that. And finally, they may be perceived as overwhelming at the beginning. So you say, "Oh, I don't want to do that. I have to think first. I have to ask questions. I have to do this and this and this." No, I prefer to just begin writing. That's at the beginning. But they are so useful that if you can get used to them, you will see how much the quality of your academic papers improve. Okay, Thomas, go. Don't worry. You are going to receive the recording, and I'm really happy that you are having this, find this useful. And that's why at the end of this slide, I say this: practice is the path. Okay, because at the end, I want you to know that despite how difficult it may seem to you, all these processes and skills can be mastered, providing you commit yourself to master them and practice to do it. So complex, yes, but feasible is what they are. And the main idea of this webinar is illustrated in the slide. Thinking before writing is a must. And that implies critical reading, critical thinking, and critical analysis. As you can see, all the requirements share the word critical, which takes you back to thinking and evaluation. Keep that in mind, thinking and evaluation. Well, that's the end of this webinar, but only the presentation. Now it's time to listen to you, to read your comments, to answer your questions, and it's time to share. And at the end of this question and answer period, I want to talk to you about something a little different, but at the end as important for academic writing as what we have already talked about. So any question, any comment, any idea to share? Meanwhile, I'm going to drink some water. Leo says, how much time would you say it's sufficient for the thinking part before writing? 2 days, a week? No. The time depends on your background, how clear you are about the theme. Okay? If it's a complete new theme for you, it may take some time. If you have at least an initial solid background, it will take less time. But you have to be careful with something. And is this: if you know too much about a theme, you have to be careful that that knowledge does not cut or does not become a kind of wall between you and the knowledge, because you say, oh, I know everything about that. And you also have to be aware that if you don't know too much about a theme, you may move from one position to another position, and everybody is going to tell you something and you are going to believe everything. No, you have to try to put yourself in middle grounds, in the sense that I know something about this, but not too much to think that I know everything and close my mind to new ways of approaching it, but also I know something, so I don't have to believe anyone at any point of view. Kusumika says, this was very fascinating. Thanks a ton. I'll catch up on the rest from the recording. Good. AA. I think until your thoughts are clear. Yes, it's true. Is until you feel sure that you understand what you have read, and also that you can make critical analysis of it, that you can evaluate the ideas based on strong evidence. Okay. Richard says, thank you for the insightful presentation. Could Titi kindly suggest very practical thing I could do in terms of critical reading and thinking? I give you some very practical things, like, for instance, establishing, first of all, why am I reading this for? So you establish a purpose first, and in terms of that purpose and the kind of text that you are reading, you can spend just the exact amount of time to get what you are looking for. Okay. And of course, you have to practice and practice and practice, because that's the main point. Okay. You have to reflect. And when you are reading critical thinking, you have to imagine. You have to use your imagination in order to understand what you are reading. Okay. How many studies should we read before we start writing? The ones that you need to have a good starting point about the theme. I mean, let me give you an example, Nipum. If you are going to write a text about, oh, bye, Margot. Check the recording. Okay, let me give you the example in Pune. If you are going to read, let's suppose, I don't know what is your field of study, but let's suppose that you are engineering, something like that, and then you have to read a theme of engineering that is very connected to philosophical and ethical elements. Perhaps you don't have enough background to understand the points just using one or just reading one or two study. Perhaps you have to read more. But what you have to do, always have to do, is to read different points of view, contradictory points of view about the same theme. So don't read just studies that are for the point of view that you are interested in. No, you have to read those, but you also have to read studies that are opposed to that point of view. And that will allow you to do critical analysis, which one has stronger evidence and is more convincing. It seems to be more valid. Okay. Hector says, great presentation. Oh, sorry, the reference. Very helpful. Finishing my MA thesis this semester, and this presentation is very refreshing. Kind regards. My pleasure, Hector. Brian, thanks for the structure. That's good. That idea is good. Structure. Yeah. It's a kind of thing that you can follow in order to do to invest your time in a better way. Any other question or comment about the presentation, I mean? Okay. Before finishing the recording and going to it, perhaps, at least in this part of the word, I want you to talk to you about an interest that we PhD education have right now. We are very interested in promoting kindness among our students. And I want to talk to you about a different perspective about kindness. Because the first thing that we think about when we hear the word kindness is to be kind to other people, right? But today, I want to talk to you about being kind to you. And like in this webinar, I told you that you cannot do what you don't understand. In this case, talking about kindness, I can tell you that you cannot be kind with other people if fully kind to other people if first you are not kind to yourself. Okay? It has been recognized in the neuroscience investigation so far that the more you accept yourself with your lights and with your darknesses, the more you accept yourself, the more you love yourself, and the more you be kind to you, that has an incredible effect upon your brain. And that help you reconnect your brain in new ways that improve your attention, your ability to pay attention to things, which is something that you really, really need when you are doing a master's or a PhD program. And besides that, that's very, very useful for your daily life. Okay? So, what I want you to reflect upon is that to be kind to other people, you have to be kind to you first. Okay? And when you do that, when you accept yourself as you are, without judging you, without attacking you, you begin to discover a new word which is full of peace, is full of acceptance. A new word and a new way to live that make you flow with changes. And when you flow with changes, with uncertainty, your stress diminish a lot. Okay? When you accept that what is happening, but not necessarily because of you, because each person has its own reality, is living their own problems and are making their own decisions that help you relax, and that open your mind to other things. And that's why neuroscientists have are studying in different universities, are studying the neuroscience of meditation. And that's something that we help you combine, find a way to concentrate on what is happening right now. And is the orange of a new word, which is kindfulness, which is kindness plus mindfulness. Kindfulness is to be kind in a conscious way, first to you and then to other people. Okay, you have said a great comparison. It is really helpful. I need to leave now. Really look forward to the recording. Thank you so much. Sam says, thanks. As a master of social work, kindness is a key characteristic, and we should be kind and accepting of ourselves. That's the first step. Maturity is a process by which we overcome our personal darkness. Absolutely. And AM says, thanks for that advice. I finished my master this spring and start PhD program this fall. Lots of great information in this presentation. I appreciate your insight. Thank you. Rania says, thank you. And someone says, great, I never heard about kindfulness. It's a new term. Shuban says, thank you. And Annalise and Maria, excellent as always. Thank you, my dear. I always learn something and take away something to think about. Such wise words about kindness. Thank you. Okay, my dears, let me stop the recording. Here it is. Okay, thank you, everybody, for registering for this webinar. Special thanks to the attendees. And next week, I'm going to talk about something very, very interesting too. Is about how to perform argument, how to argument in